right, so we've spent a lot of time this semester looking at varying religions, and you spent a lot of time reading. You've listened to a number of different lectures, and we've thought deeply, hopefully, about what some of these world religions look like, and how they've developed, and where they are, and how they affect the people that they are with. I would challenge you to think about getting out and going to a Hindu temple, going to an Islamic mosque. Don't go to those places by yourself. Take someone with you who can think well with you and help you understand what's being done there, so you can process through that with someone else at least. Because all of those places are evangelistic. I don't want you to ever go into a mosque thinking that they're not evangelistic. They'll use the words that you use. They'll use the theology, the supposed theology that you're thinking, and work towards converting you. So be aware of that and go with people that you know. But why do we do this? Why do we study world religions? I mean, what is our purpose? Obviously, we need to study in depth Christianity. We need to understand what we believe. But it's also helpful for us to understand what others believe. So that when we walk into any given situation, we can say, hey, listen, I have an idea of what you believe. I can ask you intelligent questions. I can find out where you're coming from, so that hopefully then I can get to gospel myself. And this is our ultimate goal. We want to think about getting to gospel with the people that we meet. Well, what does that depend on? Well, it depends on relationship. There's an Arabic saying that says that Arabs love to feel your presence. They like to feel your presence. Now, I'm not sure that that's just an Arabic phrase or an Arabic saying. I think it's a worldwide saying. And in our world today, in the United States, we like to say that we spend quality time with people. And quality time is defined as a short amount of time. Well, in all the world I've been in, and from Latin America to the Middle East to Europe, what I found is people like time. They want to be with you. They want to feel your presence. So the first thing I want to challenge us in is to think about, as we develop these relationships, how do we develop time so that people feel our presence? How do they know that we are with them? How do they know that we love them? Now, I want us to think about sharing the gospel for just a couple of minutes here as we finish this last chapter. So this last chapter is on why study world religions, and I think it's helpful from an intellectual point of view, but it's more than that. It's more than about being global. It's more than about being understanding of what the world is around us, but it's really about taking the gospel to the nations. So as we do that, what I want us to think about is, how do we do that? How do we take the gospel to the nations? How do we take the gospel to these other world religions? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to pray. We have to be men and women who pray. There are lots of ways to do that, and I would challenge you to do that through praying through unreached people groups. There's a video blog type of thing called Paragram that you can look up, and lots of different ways, but just praying for people, praying for the individuals that you've met, praying for individuals that you know. If you can work with refugees, getting out and working with refugees or other immigrants and spending time with them, but not just spending time with them, but praying for them, asking God for them. The second thing that we do after we pray is we practice presence. We spend time with people. And man, this is so important that we spend time with people. They need to know us. They need to know our heart. They need to know what makes us tick. Here at Boyce College, I send a lot of our students into the homes of refugees, and they work with children, right? And one time, one of the young ladies that was out in one of those communities said, Dr. Clausen, I don't know what to do. The family keeps asking me to just hang out at their house. Is it okay if I take my school books over there and I study while I'm there at their house? I said, absolutely. They just want to feel your presence. They want to know that you care about them. And so that's what she started doing. And as a result of that, it raised conversations, because they'd ask, well, what is it that you're studying? What is it that you're learning about? And she'd have a theology book or something out, and she'd discuss that with them to the very best of her ability. So that's about presence, just being with people. The third thing that we want to think about is proclamation. And proclamation is just this simple sharing of life and faith with people. So I spend time with my Muslim friend, and I said, you know what, Sunday my pastor said this. And I talk about some spiritually impacting thing in my life. Or I was praying, and God answered this prayer. Or I was reading my Bible, and this is what God said to me. Proclamation doesn't have to be full-blown gospel presentation. Sometimes it's just simple things that we've heard, learned, understood from God. When we're practicing presence and we're praying, that God can then use to begin to shift and change the heart of the person that we're with. Remember, the people that we're sharing the gospel with from other world religions have been ingrained all of their life, immersed, doused with their world religion. And God is slowly bringing them out of that through your presence and through your proclamation. And then the last thing that we do is we persuade. And persuasion is that moment where we take gospel and we say, I want you to know who Jesus is. I want you to know who Jesus is. Now, first thing I want you to see is I want you to look at this in pyramid form. What's at the bottom? The base of that pyramid needs to be prayer. You need to be praying for those lost people in your life. You need to be spending time on your knees before the Father, asking God for them. The second aspect is presence. So there's much more presence than there is persuasion. About being with people, developing relationship, going deep with them. And then we proclaim, and then we persuade. Now, a lot of times, especially as students of voice, we have a tendency to not want to persuade. We just tell people the gospel, right? And just assume that if they hear the gospel, God will change their hearts. Now, God will change their hearts. There's no doubt about that. But we also want to persuade. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 5. As Paul is talking about our ministry of reconciliation in chapter 5, it says in verse 19, He has committed the message of reconciliation to us. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, certain that God is appealing through us. We plead on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. Right? This is persuasion. Paul is pleading. Be reconciled to God. As you have prayed, as you have practiced presence, as you have proclaimed, you then have the right to persuade. And with your Muslim friend, your Hindu friend, your Buddhist friend, your Jain friend, all of these friends, all of these world religions, your Jewish friend, at some point you have this right to say, man, I want you to know Jesus. I want you to know Him in His fullness. I want you to experience Him. And you have a right to ask for that. Because you've spent time in that relationship and now you've developed that relationship. I remember when we lived in North Africa, there was a guy my age and spent a lot of time with him. I prayed a lot for him, spent a lot of time in his home, had gotten into his kitchen with his wife and his children. So now I was eating bread and drinking tea in the kitchen, which was a big deal in an Islamic home. Spent a lot of time proclaiming. And had spent some time persuading. One time my dad was in the country with me, and so I asked him to come with me because I wanted him to hear from someone older, be challenged by someone older. So I took my dad, and my dad shared his testimony and shared the gospel with him, and I was translating. But if you've ever done translation work, you're going to get tired after a while. Now, what I love about Islamic culture or Middle Eastern culture, especially the rim of the Mediterranean, is everybody gets excited when they talk. And so I'll never forget, I was talking to him, and I'd left my dad out of the conversation at that point because I was going deep with them. And we were slowly getting louder and louder. And actually, I think we may have been yelling at each other at some point. But yelling at each other with smiles on our faces. And I was trying to persuade him. Pretty soon, my dad taps me on the shoulder and tries to get my attention. I said, man, what's going on? My dad said, well, what are you guys singing? Because it's getting really loud in here. And I said to my dad, I said, man, I am telling him if he doesn't trust Jesus, he's going to go to hell. My dad looked at me kind of with this expression, right? What are you telling him? He said, well, what's he saying back? And I said, well, sadly, he's telling me that if I don't trust in Islam, then I'm going to go to hell. Now, the nice thing was we were recognizing that there was this difference between us, right? And he'll always be challenged with this understanding that Christianity is not the same as Islam. And I want him to understand that. I want him to understand that Islam is different. And if I'm not a Muslim, I go to hell. If he's not a Christian, he goes to hell. I mean, there was a clear distinction between the two. No one was saying, oh, just do your best. right? It was very, very clear. There was pure persuasion going on. Well, my dad then taps me again and says, John, man, we're spending the night here. You might try and send us there tonight, so just cool it a little bit. And I laughed and said, no, my friend would never do that to me because he cares about me. In fact, he cares so much for me that I can persuade him and it's not offensive to him. So as you're developing these relationships, I want you to go deep with people. I want you to spend time with them. Learn from them. Discuss their religion with them. Now you have an understanding of where they're coming from, right? It's not a perfect understanding. It's not a fully in-depth understanding. Man, we can spend semesters on each one of these world religions. But now you have a basic understanding where you can go out and with some confidence, you can begin to ask questions. You can begin to share gospel. You can begin to share truth. You can begin to proclaim as you pray, as you practice presence, as you proclaim. And then you can get to that point where you persuade and you ask that friend. You say, Muhammad, man, I want you to know Jesus. Because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by him. And I want you to know who he is. And you do that with compassion. And you do that with passion. Because now this is your friend. Right? So let's not be afraid of other world religions. They're false. But they're real. And we need to understand them so that we can take gospel to them in truth and righteousness.